So we have commenced the Mahabharata story, and our topic of conversation is, whereby we started, was on this negligence. How negligence in life, through our lack of participation or not being together in what is happening right now, causes problems or causes baggage, whether in the present or in the unforeseeable future. So, and this is the situation that Pandu has put himself under, because his absence of alertness, and this alertness, which was fully available to him through his ability to think, through his ability to listen, through his ability to actually look closer, maybe move the leaf just a little bit, just to double check, through his ability to not assume what it is that he thought was hearing, through his ability to just move a little bit closer in case he was not quite sure whether he was hearing what he thought was hearing. So he had all of these abilities available to him, and his negligence caused him to not exercise what was right there available for him. So in that same way, our capacities in life are always available. No one's holding back anything from us. It is our negligence that puts aside these capacities under the assumption that we are basically together. But the point is, our minds are not together unless we deliberately choose to just take a moment and say, okay, let me check the facts. In other words, this assumption, this idea of assuming what it is, causes these problems called negligence. And then we said that this negligence brings about unnecessary loads or baggage in life. Now, what does this mean? It means that every single time there is a mistake, a small mistake, no matter how small, it is almost like it adds that extra noise in the background, in the mind. So this noise is like carrying a backpack, just if you were to imagine. And all of these negligences, they create like an extra load, and then our backpack becomes heavier and heavier and heavier. Now, you can still walk with a heavy backpack, right? Absolutely. You can even run with a heavy backpack. But is it pleasant to walk with a heavy backpack? No. So, in other words, these negligences add more loads into our backpack, and then we still go through life and we say, well, it's not a big deal, I can still walk. But the point is, the feeling of what it means to just unload, right? Just to unstrap and let the backpack fall off. It feels so much more relieving and allows so much more alertness and focus on what is happening around us right now. So the irony is, carrying this load, this backpack, is what causes further negligence, because the more we have to carry this, the less capacity, the less brain power there is for thinking what is happening right now in the moment. In other words, it creates a self-perpetual cycle. And then we said that this kind of baggage caused by negligence has minor penalties and major penalties. Now, they're both penalties, but one's minor, one's major. And what are these penalties? They are what's called an inescapable consequence. In other words, whether the person is virtuous or whether the person exercises sin, either way, the consequences are inescapable. And this brings a common complaint in life. And that is, often the person observes that someone says, I often see those who cheat and lie are successful. They're the ones who go to the top. And those who are honest, those who are stating what they really feel in reality, are the ones who finish last. It's kind of like one of those phrases, nice guys finish last. Now, this is actually not true, because what we don't see is that whether the person is cheating, if they are cheating, then what we don't see is we don't see what's called a a future consequence, a future baggage. And that baggage comes in a form of guilt, comes in a form of degraded self-esteem, comes in a form of not feeling good about oneself as a person, comes in a form of not feeling confident. So it causes one to hide from society, causes distrust, it causes a sense of fatigue, mental fatigue. So all of these lows are actually there, but we just don't see that. So in other words, it is not true that those who go to say a job interview and they say, yeah, I've done this and this and this and this, and I was a CEO and I was in this high position. And then a normal person comes and says, well, I haven't got any of these skills. However, I'm willing to learn. And then what happens is the one who bragged about their status, who wasn't straight, who wasn't honest, they end up getting the position. Now you say, okay, so I get it. So in other words, the way to success is to lie and cheat and be dishonest. No, because what we don't see is that person who then later on gets into that job because of their dishonesty will suffer the consequences one way or the other. We don't know exactly how, but they will come in a form of baggage, in a form of pain, in a form of embarrassment, in a form of shame, and so on. So this is what we mean by nobody can get away from these inescapable consequences. Even Pandu, who was a great king, and he did so much good for his kingdom, Hastinapur, that even he made just one mistake, and there is no such thing as, it's okay, I'll let you go. I'll give you one free chance or one free opportunity for a mistake. It doesn't work like that. Now, I'll give you some examples of what happens, because we said minor and major penalties, right? Now, let's just do some examples to relate it to real life. Have you ever heard of those cold call scammed victims? Where like IRS or tax or, I call you up and say, you've been hacked and I need to log into your bank account. I need your password and your bank account details. Now we're thinking, how on earth is a person supposed to fall for this? But it's happening as we speak right now. Someone is literally handing over their passwords and credit card to the scammers. Now, okay, now you say, well, usually it's the older people, right? It's usually the 90s, because usually they're the ones who are targeted. That's besides the point how old the person is. This is an example of negligence. In other words, one's gullibility, one's lack of checking, just taking a moment to check, maybe type on Google, does IRS or does this company actually ask for details? It takes just 5 seconds to check. That's all it is. So the person gets scammed. I heard that Australia has been the latest target of cold call scams. And one person in there, I think was 90, got scammed, I think $600,000, which is hard to believe, but it happens, right? Because of this negligence. Another example is overconfidence in driving skills. So then, the person's feeling like confident, and then they get in the car. I've done this before. Now you already know that the accident can happen anytime on the road. Someone can get a heart attack, they can swirl into our direction and crash. So even though we can be careful, someone else may not be careful. But this overconfidence, only to the past assumption that everything went well in the past, so why should it go wrong today? This assumption causes negligence. Therefore, we fall for this mistake, and there's a major or minor penalty depending on what kind of negligence. That's where all accidents come from, this kind of negligence. Another example is cutting too fast in the kitchen. I was once cutting onions, and I love cutting fast. I was trying to cut faster and faster, trying to beat my own previous record. And then this is my first job, I was 17. And my chef always told me, Andre, you just stop cutting so fast. But I just couldn't. And one day I actually cut myself, right? Because I was cutting so fast. And that was the last time I ever worked for anyone. He basically said, Andre, don't come anymore. So that was my ticket to freedom, I gotta admit. So anyway, that was negligence as a teenager, right? So, you want to prove yourself, you will break your record. But this is another negligence, which has, in my case, it was a minor penalty, but it was still a penalty. Another example is walking mindlessly or mechanically just causes accidental sprains, which then ends up putting a person in hospital. So something so simple that we've done so many times before, this happens especially in older age, like climbing down the stairs is an assumption. I'm good at this. I've done this before, and then the person falls. I know this happened to my mom 3 times, and every single time it's not good news. So this is another form of negligence. Another example is breathing shallow. So what's the big deal? I'm just breathing. Well, what happens when a person is stressed? What kind of breathing does that bring? Contracted, shallow. And what does this do to the mind? It slows down the mind. It's, it makes the person dull. So even this mindful breathing is another example of alertness of the mind. Another is insufficient hydration. So what does this do? In health, the ideal condition is that the person stays hydrated instead of drinking water when they feel thirsty. So lack of hydration causes fatigue, and fatigue then makes the person not willing to do things because they feel tired. So if a person feels tired, by the way, most likely check your hydration levels. Speaking of hydration, I'm going to hydrate myself. Okay. Now I've got so much more energy. Another example is impulsive spending, whereby the assumption is, I need this, right? I need this latest model or latest car or latest phone or latest something because it's going to bring me some kind of, some kind of success in life. But then again, when you add these small bits of impulsive spending, then when a person looks at their finances, it is not in a good position. The outgoings are much larger than the incomings. And this then later on causes problems during economic meltdowns, or, they need to give some emergency money to their family, which is realistically the case and is likely for most of us, especially for those whose parents are still alive. You just don't know. Your parents may need the money, and then as a daughter or as a son, you want to give to them. So this is why I said last week that, at least we need to have something that is saved up, because it's not about us, it's also about others. Another example is, this happened recently in Melbourne, and those who are in India, it doesn't matter, but it's a common story in one way or the other. There was a Mr. P, we don't need to give his full name, who was driving at 149 kilometers an hour. He was intoxicated on drugs, and he was pulled over by 4 cops. You heard this? It was in the news. And the cops stopped him. And what happened to what happened then? The negligent truck driver swirled into the direction of the cops, who were, on the standing outside, punishing the guy for his negligence. And the truck driver's negligence caused him to kill all 4 cops, right? So in other words, negligence on Mr. P driving with his Porsche, who was, I believe, a real estate broker. Negligence number 1. Even a little bit of negligence on the 4 cop side for maybe not being alert of the traffic, right? Because that's a little bit of their negligence also. And also negligence on the part of the truck driver, and that created one big mess, So these families now suffer, and it was just a big, it was on the news. So we can see how these negligences have both minor and also major penalties. So they are not just some, it's not some conversation, spare time dinner conversation. It's real life that we're talking about. And this is what the Mahabharata is trying to show us, how we make these mistakes. Now, to continue the story, what happened was Pandu then was cursed, which is it's a metaphor for nobody gets a chance when they make a mistake. No one gets a way out. And he was told that if he gets intimate with his wife, then he will die immediately. So Madri, because he was with 2 wives, he was with Kunti and Madri. So one day Madri was bathing, it was a waterfall, I believe, and Pandu was like, wow, what an attractive sight I'm looking at. And he was having thoughts of getting intimate with her. So as she approached closer from the waterfall, then Pandu came, and he, couldn't stop himself. He was very tempted to embrace her. And Madri knew that if he attempts to embrace her, right, that's it, he's gonna die. So Madri even told him, no, you know what's the case. You already know what's gonna happen. So life gives us these signs, right? We get told, but due to our negligence or unwillingness to listen, that then causes or fructifies our negligence into this full-scale reality. So Madri said, no. And Pandu went ahead anyway. Now, what else does this say? Think about it. So this happened much later, right? Because Pandu, I think, was some time that this happened from the cursing to the moment that he died. So what happens is, course of time, we slowly start to excuse ourselves. We think, okay, so time has now passed and it's okay. It's happened then, now it's better. But it doesn't work like that, because what does this mean? It means Ishvara keeps track of everyone's karma, punya and papa karma, and there is no such thing as, well, time has gone by and now I get my chance to, excuse myself. This is what we human beings create. We create a narrative, and then through the course of time, we think, well, it's no longer true, right? The reality has changed. But the fact is, everything is tracked exactly perfectly. And this tracking is also what when we speak about past lives, when we speak about all of the lives that the jiva goes through. And so this is called that karma that fructifies in every single life. So in other words, there is no such thing as, well, it happened then and now I'm free, now I'm okay. No. Then when Pandu embraced Madri, he immediately collapsed. So his negligence now turned into a major penalty of death. Now, after he died, it was thought that his oldest son, Yudhishthira, should rule the kingdom. However, we said last week that Duryodhana thought, who was the oldest son of Dhritarashtra, thought that he should rule the kingdom because Duryodhana was the oldest of the Kauravas, and Duryodhana was also not blind. So far we can all relate to Duryodhana, because if you were in Duryodhana's place, you would probably also say, yeah, I should actually rule. Why not? Why shouldn't I rule? And then we ask the question, we said that Dhritarashtra gave the land, right, reluctantly to Duryodhana. We said that. And even though Dhritarashtra knew that Yudhishthira was more qualified and Yudhishthira was clearly loved by the people of Hastinapur, so he was receiving all of this input from the wise elders in the royal court. So all of this input was there, including the entire Hastinapur. So again, these societal symbols were giving us and telling us this is the right thing to do. But Dhritarashtra ignored all that. So this is now Dhritarashtra's negligence. And what happened then was Dhritarashtra gave what? The barren land to the Pandavas, right? So he gave the Hastinapur kingdom, he made Duryodhana the successive heir to Hastinapur's rulership. And then he made the Pandavas, he exiled them basically to this other land, as though he's a kind person. But if you think about it, if you give someone land that has no life, is that actually kind? No, that's just a cover-up. So this is what we do sometimes in life. We pretend like it's okay, I will give you something, but it's actually this facade that we put on. It's not being real. The person is not being true. So, and then they put this mask in front just to appear like I'm a good person, to appear like I'm a kind person, to appear like I'm a compassionate person, to appear like I love. But in actuality, there's this agenda going on in the background. So this is that symbolism behind Dhritarashtra's choice to give this barren land to the Pandavas. Now, we pose a question. We said, why did Dhritarashtra allow Duryodhana to rule, even though he knew that Yudhishthira was more qualified? Right? Now, the answer to this, we will open the discussion soon, don't worry, is this is a very common occurrence in families. Because remember, Duryodhana is the son of Dhritarashtra, like blood son. And in families, we need to be careful how much of our decisions are based on loyalty and love, and how much of our decisions are based on being objective. Now, we often confuse these two. Most of our decisions in families are over-based on this loyalty. That means love for the other. And this removes this objective thinking. For example, just so you can relate. Can you relate to this? The parents submit to the spoiled behavior of the child. Right? They're unable to say no. So what happens? The parents keep giving whatever the child wants over and over. They never say no. They hardly say no, let's put it that way. In other words, the parent, what? Has this loyalty, has this love, but how much of that is being objective? Would the parent actually do that if the child was not theirs? Probably not, because there would be division. If I do this over and over again, it's going to train the child that they can get anything they want. This later on in life causes a sense of entitlement. Now, you know these kind of people who are sense of like, I'm entitled to my wishes, like I am special. And I tell you, it's the most annoying types are these who have this sense of silent entitlement, like I deserve. My question is, according to whom do you deserve? What's so special that you deserve? But then because of this training that was done in the stage of childhood age, there's a sense of I am special. So give me time, give me, I'm a princess. So pamper me, nurture me. And also, it comes from the men also, a sense of, I have got my standards. And if it's not, if she doesn't look like this, for example, that is, that's not, I need to go for something much better. So it creates this arrogance, this standard, this constant categorizing, who's worthy of my time, who's not worthy of my time. Everything becomes a scale. 1 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I only go for 10 out of 10s. Based on what? On this false sense of entitlement caused or traced back to this training as a child, whereby the parents kept saying, yes, you can, yes, you can, yes, you can, yes, you can. So you can see how this line is always traced back to some cause. Another example is, a common example, is whereby the friend is unable to point out, even though the friend knows, but despite knowing, she's unable to point out the stupidity of another friend. So they just laugh it off. But inside they know this is clearly wrong. And why? Because there's a fear of rejection. Right? There's too much sense of loyalty or love invested in the relationship. And if I point out the stupidity, then I'll feel like then, I may, my love may get compromised, and I don't want that. So what do? I don't point out what I know I should point out. And what does this do? It trains me, who should have said something, that this kind of behavior is okay. But it also creates conflict in me because I've been a witness to something that I clearly know is not right. Another example is, one time I was walking on the beach and I saw these two couples, young couples, that were clearly in their honeymoon stage. Now, in the honeymoon stage, usually the emotions are high and the intellect is low. So it's just, you're just immersed in this world of feeling high. It's common behavior. It lasts about 6 months and it's over, 1 year tops. And so what happened is the boyfriend, he had this happened in India. He had this bag, plastic bag, and it had rubbish in there. And I was on the beach in Mumbai. He walked to the ocean and he just emptied out this bag of rubbish into the ocean. And I saw this, right? And what did the girlfriend do? She's like, literally clapping. Now just think about the scene, right? Negligence on the part of the boyfriend, clearly not right, adharmic, let's call you unjust, unfair to the environment. Would she have done this, clapped and cheered him if she didn't know this guy? Would she? No.
Probably not, yeah.
No, because she would probably think, what an undecent guy. If he's this undecent to the ocean, imagine how undecent he will be to my own parents, to my own family. How can I bring that kind of undecent guy and introduce him to my mom and dad? But owning to this love, that's what I say, love is blind, that has its context. It created the sense of loyalty and love, which superseded what she clearly knew, and I have no doubt that she knew that what was being done was incorrect. So again, let me trace back to what I said originally. When it comes to family, we need to be clear how much of our decisions or our actions are based on love and loyalty, and how much of our decisions are based on objectivity. Would I respond like this if this person wasn't that close to me? Would I? And then we have to ask this question. And then we have to balance these two, right? So that we don't fall for this giving the child everything they want and then cheering when someone does something bad to the environment. So we can keep on going with examples like this for a long time. It's like gangs are common, right? Gangs, there's always that person in a gang who clearly knows this is not right, but they're scared to say something because they fear, because they're enjoying that love, that connection in the gang. So they cannot get out, and this creates that conflict inwards. So the question is, would you have done the same if you were Dhritarashtra? Would you have given the Hastinapur, the rich Hastinapur land to your son, Duryodhana, and given the barren land to the Pandavas? Think about that. What I mean to say is, it is not so black or white. We cannot put people in boxes, because often we want to say now, what a bad king. Dhritarashtra is such a bad man. But you can see when I just use these examples, when we're entangled, how much harder it actually becomes. So it's not just all talk, like good person, bad person. Put yourself in their shoes and you will see you will probably be faced with the same challenges. So this is what the Mahabharata is trying to show us, that life is not black or white. There's always, if you know the background story of that person, we will probably stop judging them. Actually, it reminds me, it's actually Nima's example. Someone told her, a friend of hers told her that she used to, not Nima, but her friend, judge. No, it goes like this. She was looking for respect. Whenever she talked to someone, she was always amplifying her status, right? So this person was like saying, well, I'm much bigger in life, but in actuality, that wasn't true, right? So there's this tendency to overblow things. Why? Because she was looking for love. Now, the question was, why are you doing this? There was a question that Nima posed to this woman. And the woman knew, she even knew that, I know I'm doing this, but you see what happened in childhood, this woman said, was, I always felt that I wasn't loved by my parents. I felt that my sister was loved more. And so this always caused me to look for approval and validation. This caused me to actively seek my parents' love. So I had to do these extreme things because I felt that they didn't love me. I had to do these things to capture their attention. So that was her logic when she was small. And she took this logic when she grew up as an adult. So what do you think happened? What kind of behavior do you think is going to happen now? Same, right? So her interactions, how have they resulted? Whenever she speaks with people, she does something extreme. Why? To gain that love. In other words, that training as a child carried on into adulthood. Now, why am I saying this? Why am I saying this? Because if we don't know the background of a person, what is our tendency? We see, oh, okay, she's clearly, she's clearly flamboyant. She's trying to show off. Let me just mute someone here. Okay. However, once we know the story, the background story of a person, if we even just take a moment, then we actually develop empathy for them. We go, that whole sense of criticism, it's no longer possible, because now we go, wow, she couldn't have done anything about it, because that's how she felt, and now she's carrying over to this life. So again, it's very easy to judge, but when we know the background story of these strange types, then you don't get so critical in the first place, right? So when I use that example of that, woman cheering and the guy throwing rubbish into the ocean, see, our first tendency is to go, what an XYZ, you fill in the blanks. But if we actually just take a moment and get curious, what would cause this person to engage in this kind of behavior, then it actually makes us a thinker. It causes us to be an inquirer, which helps us in life, to think much more expansively about life. Versus if we just put this picture about this person and go full stop, what does this do? It trains us to look at life and go, here's how things are on the surface, full stop. In other words, how we do one thing in life is how we do everything in life. I'm sure the common example is you give a card game or any kind of game that involves some kind of strategy, and you just put a card game on the table and you play this game. How the person plays the game, how they respond to challenges is probably how they respond to challenges in real life. Maybe we put Rami here, huh? Play a game of Rami now. So sometimes the person gets impatient during the game, right? So this means there's impatience likely in real life. We're not saying absolutely, but it's likely. Some get angry when they lose, or they get quiet, like, I've got nothing else to say, I want to stay out of this. They put like this block, right? This is it. So it's likely that that kind of behavior could be expressed in real life. Some find it some just don't get angry at all. They just say, when they lose, they want to go again, right? Because they find it fun. Like, yeah, this is a great challenge, so let's go again. Likely it reflects one's real life. So maybe try that, buy some game and then play with your family and just put a video camera and start monitoring your progress, how you are. Just an idea. Okay. Now, the second question was, what made Yudhishthira accept the small land? I would like to open up a conversation. So the question is, what could have made Yudhishthira accept this small land? Give me some ideas.
Andre, I was just thinking, isn't life like that? I mean, it's a very complicated world, and people do things and don't do things, and people are negligent and not negligent. I mean, isn't that all part of life?
Okay.
I mean, you have to do your best in life, but
okay,
you can't change everybody. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
That's fine. That's what I need. Okay, I'm not going to say anything to that, but I want to hear someone else also. But take a note of your point, Dave.
Well, you don't try and change everybody. You just try and change yourself.
Okay.
I think he was trying to avoid the conflict within the family.
Okay, I was trying to avoid the conflict. Yeah, possibly.
And I also think he was too much, devoted to his, seniors, like Dhritarashtra was his uncle. And
Yeah.
sometimes in life also, we just pray to our elders, even if they are wrong. So that could be another reason.
Okay. Over devoted
Yeah,
authority figure, right? So we don't question that.
I'd like to say something,
Yes.
Andre.
Yes, Madhu.
I'd like to say that Yudhishthira was a very good, a just person.
Yeah.
He may have felt sorry for Dhritarashtra because he should have been king and he happened to be blind.
Yeah.
And so he may have felt that his father got the opportunity to be king. And so, well, it's okay now for Duryodhana to take over, or for me to be sidelined now.
Okay. Okay. Interesting perspective. Yes.
I think he's being very subjective here rather than being objective, knowing that the Duryodhana is molded with bad character, and they know that he is being selfish, as well as all the other, like Bhishma and Drona. They have not, although they have advised Yudhishthira, they did not did not come out very strongly. So as someone said that Yudhishthira is basically being humble, and he wanted to respect the elders, and which is also part of the cultural influence in India, even now today, these days. And based on this reason, and also probably on the other side, he knew that he would be able to turn the barren land more prosperous with his brothers. These are the possible assumptions that I'm thinking.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay, good assumption, yeah.
Can I also say a comment on Dave's comment, because I just felt that's a really important point to bring up. Because it feels like we can't erase all ignorance. So perfection isn't exactly what we're striving for, but is it correct to say just trying to raise our awareness of as much as possible to get rid of as much ignorance as possible?
Okay, definitely. Yeah, so we're trying our best to get rid of our ignorance.
Okay.
Yeah, Yudhishthira actually accepted the
Andre, I have
decision.
one more thought.
Hold on, just let Rani finish.
Sorry. Yudhishthira probably accepted the decision made by his uncle due to respect for him, and felt that whatever the decision was to select Duryodhana to rule the kingdom, because I suppose there wouldn't be conflict. He probably understood Duryodhana's character and gave him the throne, and knew that Yudhishthira will be more amicable about it. And so, that's why he accepted the barren land.
Okay. Someone else wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was thinking that it's not very often in life that you get awarded a whole heap of land or even a little amount, so that while it may have been an unjust kind of thing, it's probably a confidence about knowing how to respond. So if he's been subject to a whole lot of injustices over time, then he may have responded differently. But if this is the first instance of a gross act of injustice, then maybe he would have had doubts about how to respond.
Yeah, okay. That's a good point, a doubt how to respond. Okay, someone else wanted to say?
Andre, when we usually are kids, and our mother distributes some good things to us, for example, ice cream to 2 kids.
Yeah.
And if we see that, one proportion is higher than the other, as a child, we are, quickly, we say about it. We raise our concern. Hey, mother, the ice cream is more in my brother's plate. Yeah. But when we grow older, we don't know how to, speak about the discrimination that we are seeing for us.
Okay.
So what causes that kind of change in attitude?
Okay. Okay, anyone
I
else?
think,
I'll give you my
maybe, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Andre, I had one thought on this because Yudhishthira was known as Dharmraj, right? So for him, he lived and died by that philosophy. It was maybe he didn't go that deep into his thinking. So it's possible that based on his understanding of Dharma, anything that comes from an elder is a blessing in whatever form it is. So maybe he didn't analyze it as deeply as we are thinking, is it just, is it unjust? He just said, this is my father figure. Whatever comes from him, I need to accept it on the basis of her.
Good point. Yeah.
I think that's true, because I think that would be the case, because culturally at that time it would have been a challenge to the authority if you tried to question what they'd actually decreed. So I suspect that you take it humbly and you just it is what it is.
Okay, good points. Okay, anyone else?
Wouldn't you have a can you hear me all right, Andre? So wouldn't you have a right to kind of protest that? Like you'd have some sort of like today, for example, if I was left a small portion in the will of my mother and father, then I have a free right. Well, here in Australia anyway, I can testify, or I can test the will free of charge. It doesn't cost any money if you're a family member to contest a will. So say back in those days, like if he had the right to a larger portion of that land, then wouldn't he have backing from armies and different would he have some political right to that?
No, that's what I was saying. Culturally, it's divine right of kings. Back in those days, there's no concept of democracy. So I think you're coming from a contemporary mindset of a democratic mind, whereas back then it would have literally you've seen all the Shakespeare plays and things. The kings get challenged and all kinds of havoc breaks loose. So your loyalty has to be the monarch looks after the subjects, and the subjects are loyal to the monarch, and that's it.
Okay, I'll give you my take on this, and I've taken note of all of the comments, and actually I've taken them on board. The common tendency, the human tendency is, and see if you can relate to this, is in life, when we're offered a choice, as Dhritarashtra has portrayed to Yudhishthira, it's either the barren land or it's war. So the common tendency is in life we create either or, and we limit ourselves to this either or. It's either this or it's either that. In other words, we limit ourselves to the choices portrayed by another person who we perceive as authoritative. So for example, in fact, Jivita in her SMS, she made a good point, and it's in line with what we've been saying. She said that the Pandavas revered Dhritarashtra as their father, right? So they had utter respect for him. And for that reason, they took his word as the final authority. And we've been saying this clearly, I've heard you. Now, because they took this as final authority, that means, this is what he said, therefore we need to follow this. What happened because of that? They suffered later on, right? Because the problem wasn't solved, the war was still going to go on. So again, what happens is in life is we get told by this perceptually authoritative figure, here's what you can do. You can either A or either B. And then what do? We go, okay, I'll choose this one, like a child. In other words, we fail to look in between. We fail to think deeper for ourselves, and then we succumb to the choices, the limited choices provided by another limited mind. And because of that, it is unlikely that it's going to be in line with what you want, because your wants are usually different than what somebody else offers you, because they don't know you. They don't know your life. They don't know your karma. They don't know your preferences. So how can it be true that what they offer is 100% healthy? Highly unlikely. Not necessarily, but it's unlikely. So when we choose this choice, we fail to think deeper. So what happens when we succumb to this limitation provided by the so-called authoritative figure who has offered us A or B? What happens is, number one, it trains us not to think for ourselves. Because that's all you do. You just pick A or B. That's it. So where's the question now, using your buddhi to investigate? Is this really good for me? Is this really wise? Are they limited? Because they could be. That's the reality, right? Why should I see them now as an authority figure and then just go, yep, okay, you've done your research. How do you know they've done their research? We don't. And usually people don't. It's usually made on the basis of an assumption on what somebody else believes. What also happens is it ends up causing the person to rely on another to make decisions for them. I cannot even tell you how often this happens in relationships. There's this, for example, there's a stereotypical, I don't know if it's in India, but I know in the West it's quite strong. There's this whole idea that the man leads, right? Man does all the decision making, right? And the woman just follows. In other words, what does this do to the woman through time? It degrades her level, her capacity of thinking. So she ends up depending all of the decisions for daddy to make decisions for her. In other words, it creates gender inequality in terms of buddhi. And then no wonder, women don't get privileged to, you don't find them in such high positions. But the reality is there's no difference between gender. Only the anamaya kosha, the physical, the reproductive organs, that's it. In terms of your mind, in terms of the vijnana maya, manomaya, pranamaya, exactly the same. But only to these stereotypical cultural symbolic impressions that we buy into, it creates this inequality. And then the person ends up going, yeah, please make decisions for me. And what also happens is, because of this inequality, this lack of making a decision for oneself, because they've been trained to select A or B on the basis of another providing it for them, is then we justify and we say, just surrender and be in the flow. Just be in the now. What about tomorrow? No, don't think about tomorrow. Just come back to the now. There's great power in the now. Can I take some past, some learnings I got from the past? No. You're already out of the now. Come back in the now. In other words, this black or white thinking, or this inability to look past what we learn. For example, we'll just take this now, this principle of just being in the now. Like, wait a minute. What is this? Is this all there is? In other words, I'm being limited to just being in the now, right? So there's this assumption. I'm now not allowed to plan in the future because I'm out of the now. I'm not allowed to use the past as a lesson to bring it into the present. Thus, I can make an informative decision because, right, after all, it's being in the now. So again, we buy into these books, these titles, these one-liners, and we limit ourselves on the basis of another person's authority. So what else does this do when we succumb to another person's authority, to another so-called authoritative figure? Is it gives the other license to repeat that to somebody else in the future. A common example is abusive, just coming to my mind, it's an abusive relationship. And the man abuses the woman and they break up. Now, the woman never stood up for herself. But what has this actually done now? The man's going to find another woman and he's going to continue what he has done in the previous relationship. Why? Because he has been trained, he has been given license to repeat. Why? Because the woman never stood up for herself. She's never said no. So in other words, it's not just about me and this who's next to me. We have to expand our vision and see how our decisions are actually influencing the society that we will never even see, right, out there. So it's a much bigger expansion of the mind versus just thinking it's just me, myself, and I. And what's the solution to this succumbing? How do you actually stop this from happening? The answer is very simple. And you've heard it before. Standing up for oneself. Like firmly, standing up, stand up for yourself. You've heard this before. And for example, I've just heard, and I was so happy to hear this in the recent news, is in Sydney, this happened about 5 days ago, a woman, 22, was working hospitality, and a co-worker spanked her on the butt. And she got angry. And she said, firmly, she said, "You can't do this." And what did the man say? "Oh, it's okay, I'm married, I got a wife." Crazy, isn't it? And what happened later? She actually filed a lawsuit, right, for sexual harassment. I was so happy. I was like, this is my kind of woman. She actually stands up for herself, and she's showing as an example to others what it means to say no and to be firm about it. Now, imagine if she went the other way and she said, "Oh, ha, ha, ha," like just that sort of flirty, childish attitude. What would that mean? What would that do to the other person, to that man? It would give him license. It's okay to repeat this elsewhere. Right, so think about it. That's what we mean. We have to think past ourselves, how it's actually damaging another person in the future that you will never meet. So the whole society is structured like this. So all of these behaviors that we see are a reflection of how we take care of how we stand up for ourselves. And we don't stand up for ourselves, then we're just reinforcing that adharma is okay. You won't get punished for doing something that is unrighteous. And that is clearly not the right way to live. So as we can see, Vedanta is not just about saying, speaking about this vision of oneness. That's actually the easy part. The real challenge, where your character really shines, is how much one's really thinking about the whole, including the whole, as though you have a responsibility. And we do. Because the fact is, Ishwara is always taking care of us, is providing us air, providing us food, providing us all the necessary resources that we need to thrive in life. But what are we giving back? We don't even give back saying no. So the least that we can do is stand up for ourselves when something is being shown that is clearly not right. It is our duty to say no. Okay. And what happens if we're pressured? Common situation in workplaces. What if we got to make a decision? It's A or B. Make up your mind. Stop. In other words, who are you to pressure me? Right? What's so special about the others to pressure me? In other words, this is again standing up for oneself. So in other words, when there's a pressure situation, it is highly unlikely that the intellect is fully available to think. So this is the most crucial moment, usually, when we got to say, I cannot think now. I'm not thinking straight. I need time. No, make up your mind. No, I need time. Give me 24 hours and then I'll make up my mind. So again, this is what's called standing up for oneself. Because if we don't, what's going to happen? Like Yudhishthira, who could not stand up to A or B and just succumbed to this authoritative figure, ends up getting what is clearly unrighteous, clearly unfair, clearly what we call adharmic. Okay, so this is my take on, just one take possible in this particular scenario. Now, what I would like to do is move on with the story. Okay. So, question 3. This is a conversation is going to get open. So maybe, prepare your mouth to talk. Okay. So Pandavas chose to accept this land. And they did. And what happened? They built Indraprastha, a successful, thriving, prosperous city from the land that they were offered. And how did they do this? They did it from scratch, from the beginning. Now, here's a question. What is the symbolism that the Pandavas, what do you think is the symbolism that the Pandavas were able to build Indraprastha from scratch? What do you think this means?
They took a what could be perceived as a tragedy, and they utilized it as an opportunity for growth.
Good. Utilized it, yep. Okay. Anything else?
Yep.
It's the self-confidence and possibly hard work that they think they can, I mean, they did that through self-confident hard work to develop that land to a more prosperous thing. But it's also a challenge. They took it as a challenge.
Definitely was a challenge, but it's still, as Thomas said, they use it as an opportunity. Yeah. Okay.
I think it demonstrates that once you have skills, no matter where you're put, you will prosper.
Good, good, yeah. Good observation.
I would say they.
Yes.
I would say they did not surrender to the odd-looking situations of that particular land.
They did not surrender. Expand on that.
Yeah. So for example, if we get something and we always see negative in that particular thing.
Yeah.
They saw that this is not negative, this is a positive thing, and they did not surrender to that particular situation that everyone was saying this is a barren land, this is a barren land, this is a barren land. No, they said, okay, we'll change it and convert it.
Fantastic point, Nina. Okay, more.
I think because they were so good and they were caring, all people were behind them. So they all together felt they want to do a new life and live in harmony, and rather than living with the other kind of king. So that's what really made it happen, because they would have needed strong support to make it happen.
Yep, good. Yep, good.
Maybe they decided to turn something that was unjust and use that sort of energy and put it into something productive and positive. Like, so, you know, rather than sort of act out and start a war, they just channeled that energy into putting a lot of effort into, you know, showing them how they could, make something huge out of it. Yeah.
Goody. Okay, more.
Yep. Maybe there was their pride that drove them. They said, look, we're glad to be rid of you. We're going to go and build this place and we can show you what we can do. And we won't have to put up with all your directives from above, you know.
Okay, good. Or show you, okay.
Yeah.
When life gives you lemon, make a lemonade, you know, that's what they did.
Okay. David?
Yeah, in terms of a symbolism, it could be a type of karma yoga that they were doing.
Yeah, very true. Very possible. Okay. One more before I give my take on it. I know there's something there.
I was going to say, Andre, maybe he didn't entertain a lack mentality.
He didn't entertain the lacking mentality.
Was very accountable, responsible for his thoughts, and just didn't, had an abundant mentality.
Okay, good. Okay, it's so much actually is in this one scene, because the fact is now it's over. The decision has been made. So in other words, what has happened has happened. So now there's no reversing. We know that. So in other words, as life provides us situations, we come to that point and we say, okay, now this is the new situation. So for the Pandavas, this was a new situation. They were given this land and they were able to build Indraprastha. Now, how do they do this? And what does this mean? What I see from this is life never defeats us. Instead, we feel defeated by life. Life, there is no some defeating God. Defeating God is going, you're defeated. Instead, we look at a situation and we assess it or conclude that this is defeating worthy. In other words, we write off life as defeated, or we write off our situation as defeated. Who did that? Did someone force you? Someone put a gun to your head and say, I'm defeated. Okay, I'm defeated. No, actually someone did, and that's called ourselves, right? We put our gun to our own hands and say, I'm defeated. And therefore, once we make that conclusion, what happens to our actions? They reflect those decisions. In other words, our actions stop, cease from there on. In other words, putting this in real life, suppose there's a challenge. I heard that Qantas laid off, 2,500 workers. And suppose one of those workers now goes, my life's defeated, it's over. Now, has life really defeated that person? Right? I mean, can you say that life has defeated? No, because life is just objective. There's no such thing as entity going, I'm going to defeat you. It just happened, right? That was what was revealed. That was the situation that was required, because the company has to lay off workers to survive. Someone's got to go, right? So the Pandavas started from scratch. They had nothing, just like all of us. You come in with nothing, right? And out of this nothing, they were able to build this prosperous city. They were able to use their skills, use their talents, use negotiation skills, use asking for help. And out of this zero state, they were able to build a thriving city. In the same way, all of us are in the same position. We basically come here starting from scratch. So this is why we cannot now say that person is more successful, they're more lucky, and this person, I'm so unlucky, and they've got it better, they've got better parents, and they were born in a royal family, and they have a better mind, and they have a better position. This is all a narrative that we create to justify so we can feel good about our own lack of putting action to actually move forward in life. So in the same way, the Pandavas did not succumb to what was in front of them, which was this new situation. They said, how can we make the best use out of it and move forward and thus grow? Okay, so this is why a very important point is one never is defeated. Instead, one gives themselves permission to feel defeated. But in actuality, there is no such thing as defeat, because the resources are always available, help is always available, and that is equally available to all, right? Otherwise, then this whole blame thing is going to start, which we'll talk about. This blaming thing, it's their fault, and I'm a little victim here. I'll get to that soon. Okay, now let's continue the story with the Mahabharata. Seeing Pandava's success, Duryodhana burned with jealousy. He couldn't stand what he was seeing. Like, how could they be so successful? Thought Duryodhana. And so he formed plots to eliminate the Pandavas. I'm sure you know about this scene. So before we talk about those plots, let's talk about this sense of jealousy. What is this jealousy? What is jealousy? What do you think it is?
It's a comparison between two persons. One thinks that, I think in this case, Duryodhana feels a bit inferior compared to the Pandus, and he was just feeling jealous that he is not up to their standards, perhaps.
Okay. Good.
It's something someone else has that you want, that you love.
Okay.
I was just learning about it the other day, listening to a talk, and they were just talking about jealousy. It's a form of the negative emotion of love, the negative side of love, because that manifests in anger, hatred, jealousy, and that all really stems from the emotion of love. Someone else has something that you really love.
Yeah, okay. So it's a distorted form of love. There's love for that, but it comes with biases, and those biases.
That's right.
Okay. What else could jealousy be? What do you think it is?
It's insecurity, inferiority.
Yeah, okay. Insecurity, inferiority. Good.
I was going to say that I know whenever I'm jealous of someone, I know that it's actually something within me that wants what they've got or wants to be like them. So it's almost a yearning for, jealousy is almost a yearning for personal growth or trying to grow as a human instead of being actually jealous for an object.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good point, Thomas.
Yeah.
A yearning.
Yeah, a yearning to grow, a yearning to become a more mature person, a yearning to ripen.
Yeah, I can relate
Because
to
you
that.
see somebody else who is mature, has got more than you, has trodden the path, and you want to be there, but it comes up as jealousy.
Yeah. Okay. So in other words, there's now I have a contrast. Now I see what's possible, and I realize, whoa, I'm not there. So now there's a yearning. Oh, okay. So I know what else is possible. Thus, let me now try to gain that. Okay. Good, Thomas.
Yeah, it kind of manifests as a lack. So there's some lack that needs to be filled, and you're perceiving this other scenario as something that could fill this lack.
Okay. Yeah, lack. Good. Relate to that also.
Andre, I also saw jealousy as similar to what everybody else has said, but also kind of like a win-lose mentality. That if somebody is winning, they're winning at my expense, or means that I'm technically losing. So they can't see a win-win scenario where they're winning and I'm winning.
Okay, good. Yeah, they're all right. Okay. So what is jealousy? Jealousy is a insecure mindset. It's a mindset. So it's a condition of the mind. And what kind of condition? It means that I am small and I want to be bigger. So as Thomas was saying, in other words, I see something now that's big, and I thought that was big until I saw this. Now, in contrast to what I saw, I now feel small. Of course, when you become that big, then you see something bigger, and again, you create the same story, narrative of insecurity. So in other words, I feel small in contrast to another. And this jealousy creates or becomes the basis of one's actions. And we don't even realize it. For example, in a relationship, when I say relationship, I'm not always talking about intimate partners. I'm talking about any kind of friendship, or there's an involvement with another person or another even object, there's this power struggle. Even a power struggle is a form of jealousy. So this turns into wanting respect. And then this power struggle comes in a form of, in other words, how do you now relate power struggle to jealousy? Oh, I feel they're more empowered than me, right? So they're just sort of like and now what do? I throw a sarcastic remark. I try to put them down a little bit, just so that I can feel better about myself, because I'm jealous of their power. And this goes on constantly like this, right? Constant power battle. This is another form of subtle jealousy, and it comes in a form of sarcastic remarks, even jokes like, jokes. But it's actually inside, it's born out of this subtle jealousy. And now the question is, how do we eliminate, or how do we minimize this jealousy that comes in small? It can come with anyone. It can come student to student, teacher to student, vice versa. It can be so many forms. So we know that, but how do we now minimize this jealousy? And before we answer that, why would we want to minimize it? You say, well, so what if I'm jealous, right? It hasn't caused much problems in my life so far. So why should I stop being jealous? Give me a reason. The reason is because how you look at one thing is how you look at everything. Now, what is jealousy? Reduction of someone else's condition. So what does this mean? If I'm reducing someone else, it is likely I'm reducing myself also. It always comes back to the source where from this emotion of jealousy is arising. So one cannot get away with it and say, so what? It's actually affecting the person, the one who is jealous. So how do we eliminate jealousy? Give me some ideas, or just minimize it, not eliminate, because we don't know.
So Andre, before answering that question, what I have noticed is jealousy creeps up when we treat someone as the other. So for example, parents would never feel jealous if their kids, are better than them or have more power than them, or, are extending their own ambitions.
Good, excellent point.
Right?
Yeah, excellent.
Right? So I think Advaita Vedanta is the answer to that. Don't see anybody else as other.
Yeah, definitely. So the foundation is seeing that sameness. Now, of course, this is now a higher teaching is seeing that one content in all beings. So then how can I be jealous of the one content which I'm also not apart from? So this is a higher way to eliminate jealousy. And it's actually the ultimate way to eliminate. Yes, Brendan?
Yeah, so I think to eliminate the jealousy would be to like have a clear perspective and understanding. So say if I was feeling jealous and I thought, I don't like this feeling of jealousy, I want to remove it. Just to sort of wish it away doesn't work, but I need to understand what's going on, and I think, in Duryodhana's, circumstance, he sort of had this ambition, which was based off, I guess like a lack of self-worth. He based his sort of the way he viewed himself upon, external circumstances like other, so when he saw that this place was thriving, it threatened him. He felt threatened by that. And so like if I was in that situation and, obviously I wouldn't want to live like that. So then to be able to sort of live with peace, I would need to find the truth or the reality in that situation, what was going on within me. And once I found that, then it would probably just vanish in a puff,
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
But also you could say that you could never see the sacrifices, the liabilities and the obligations that are going with whatever it is you're looking at from the superficial point of view, that you're feeling that jealousy of, because there's a lot behind that to support that object, whatever it is that the other has achieved, and you're only looking at the face. You're not looking at what's behind it.
Okay.
I think. Sorry. Go on.
Go on, please.
I think jealousy is it's an innate factor in every human. And your question is, how do we eliminate?
Yeah, how do we minimize it?
Minimize it, okay. Yeah. Now, I think as somebody else earlier on said, you can use jealousy as a means to motivate yourself to be better. That's a positive side. But on the negative side, instead of trying to improve yourself, you try to bring the other person down.
Yeah.
That is the negative side of jealousy. So to get rid of jealousy, I think you put a positive spin to it.
Yeah, excellent point, Sundaram. Excellent. Love that point. Yes, Jim?
Andre, sorry, what am I trying to say? Often come from the attitude of gratitude. What is it that I have in my life that I'm actually grateful for? And then, it brings it. If someone's, I don't know, whatever it is that I'm jealous of.
Yeah.
I can say, well, listen, if I'm grateful for the things that I have right now, and, I generally go about 5 things.
Yeah.
And then I say, well, listen, if you really want that, or really, whatever it is, say a car or something, I go, well, and then I work out a plan, how to actually get there. But yeah, always, gratitude for the things I have right now. And then, it minimizes, therefore it minimizes, the jealousy or whatever.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll integrate, I like Sundaram and Jim's point, and I'll bring them together and we'll create a little formula. And we'll say step 1, how to minimize jealousy. Now, last week, someone pointed out a process, and that process always starts with acknowledgement. So then we say, okay, here we go. This is now me experiencing jealousy. There is jealousy in me now. Okay, here we go. It's happening again because of this. So firstly, we acknowledge it to ourselves. And then we say, this jealousy is actually irrational. It has no basis in reality. It's totally disconnected from what is happening right now. I'm creating this narrative in my mind. So this is what we call addressing the narrative through the means of acknowledgement. So we say, here it is. That's step one. And then we say, we're still in step one. We say, you know, by trying to be jealous, I'm just trying to feel better about myself. And the way to do that is by putting someone else down. And then you say to yourself, would I prefer if someone did that to me? Right? Probably not. So you're still in this acknowledgement process, a little bit of rationalizing. And then you say, whenever I create a picture of someone superior, what naturally happens is the behavior is such that I want to put them down, become like this mental chainsaw, you know, cutting people off to bring them down to the level that I feel comfortable. So we acknowledge this is happening right now in us. We are putting another down so that we can build ourselves up, but that has no basis in reality. It doesn't acknowledge the other as they are. It becomes all about me trying to feel good. Now, the step two would be to address the root cause, which basically all of us have been saying. And what this means is we have to narrow down what could be the cause of this emotion. Now, what do I mean by saying narrow down? I know we got 2 minutes left. I will probably go over time just a little bit. Is often, what often happens is we cannot solve a problem in us because we overgeneralize it. So in NLP psychology, this is called chunking up or chunking down. Whenever you want to go abstract, you chunk up. And then, for example, you know, the car, that's chunked up. But if you want to chunk down, you go spark plug. So as you minimize, you go down to the details. So we have to play with this chunking up and chunking down. Chunking up always creates this bigger picture. But in order to get to the heart of the matter, to the root cause, you have to chunk down. You have to be specific. It's called specificity. So we say, okay, what could be the cause? What could trigger it? Why is this happening again? What could be the possibility of triggering this? So you get curious about this emotion of jealousy. We start to sort of become our own therapist, our own questionnaire. Now, step three would be to apply a counter thought. This is what Jim was pointing out. One of the counter thought means opposite to what is occurring right now. In other words, we say, well, what can I actually learn about this person? What could have this person done that has gotten them to such a position that I could learn for myself and thus also thrive equally well? In other words, we're starting to get curious, again, inquiring into the heart of the matter. What makes them such a successful person? And we can also get inspired. We can say, wow, I now know what else is possible. And this is what Thomas was saying. We can say, well, now that I'm so grateful that I've been shown a much greater possibility than I thought was imaginable. So now let me choose to use this as an example of how I can thrive myself. So again, we can convert this into something that motivates us to grow. So this is why I say all of the opinions, especially by Sundaram, Jim, and Thomas, they were, they were all correct. And a few more that were saying something. Okay. Now, question. How or what do we do when someone is jealous towards us? Suppose someone doesn't like that you're a good researcher, or that you have eye for detail, or that you get more attention from others, or you have more views, you have 10,000 more views on YouTube, and they have only 9,999, they want one more. Okay, so, and suppose now they're jealous of you. What are some solutions that we can navigate through this circumstance? What do you think it is?
You mean to say, how do you how do you pacify them, or you improve them?
How do you manage if someone's jealous? How do you minimize that damage? Because you see, every time they're going to keep getting jealous, and it's going to become like a pest, like an annoyance, because they can damage your reputation. They can do something, backstab or something like that, and you won't even know. And you will, later find out and go, "Oh my goodness, this is actually becoming a real burden in my life." So how can we manage this?
first, to identify that they're jealous of you, you need to recognize some of your inner thoughts about it too. Because it's a reflection of your thoughts also. Why do you think that someone is jealous of you? So what are you seeing in them? Their behavior, their words, their actions.
Okay,
So
okay.
that you need to reflect back on yourself and ask yourself the solution to this, because obviously it's the behavior that's making you think they're jealous of you.
Okay, but Rani, what happens if their actions actually are causing some problems in your life? They're actually damaging your reputation, your brand, who you are in the company, and it's actually hurting you, it's getting to you. Because now if I can think all I want, but the reality is they're actually attacking. So what do I do?
Ignore it. Because why are you allowing that words to be who you are?
But you're not. You're just being who you are. You're being a person that you are. You're not doing anything. It's the other who is now, confronting. So that's my question.
You deal with it in a dharmic way, like following the dharma. You would, in this country, you would, seek legal advice, deal with it appropriately, not necessarily. But I think, sorry, I'm not sure of your name, the lady who was speaking before.
David.
I think, like that's a good thing. Like, because sometimes like my perception can be off. So rather than just dealing with the situation, maybe dealing with, my internal problem that's going on within me first, so that then I'm not acting out of a place of resentment. I'm acting out of a place more of, say, compassion rather than,
I think we should try to pull people up, in that situation. Like when we are jealous, we try to pull people down. Yeah. But if we recognize that someone is jealous of us, we should try to, bring them at par with us, or try to pull them up as much as we can. But looking at this Duryodhana scenario, I think ultimately it's probably the good ways to cut them off from your life.
Cut them off.
Because usually a person who is jealous of us won't be able to, who won't listen to us.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
They might listen to others, but not
what
to
if you
us.
can't cut them off?
I was going to say, I was thinking the opposite might actually also work. If you were able to actually make an effort to befriend them and try to understand them and help them to understand you, and just try to diffuse it that way through knowledge of the other.
I think you're right. I think first of all, we have to identify what are the key behaviors that impacts on you. Once you've identified that, you can either sit with the person and discuss those key behaviors and ask what is the cause and how you could help, like trying to be friendly with them and all that. So that could be another way of addressing the jealousy that's impacting on your behavior, or on you.
Because that's right. As we were saying before, it's really coming out of insecurity. So you've really got to help them to feel more secure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, good point.
Yudhishthir. So Andre, just one quick comment that Yudhishthir's behavior towards Duryodhana was all good, even at the end of that particular war.
Yeah.
So whatever behavior he showed towards Duryodhana, he could not conquer him.
Yeah, true. Yeah, he could not conquer him. Okay, now I want to stop there. He could not conquer him. Okay, so, and also what Martin and Sundaram said, and a few more, solution mode, is one of the ways. Another is to share one's vulnerabilities. So suppose someone's jealous of you. See, the problem is coming out of their insecurity. So what one can also do is they can also share their own vulnerabilities, because see, in their eyes, you're above. So by sharing your vulnerabilities, you basically bring yourself down to their level. In other words, we're becoming now equal. And this is what Martin was saying. We try to understand them, but also through understanding them, we actually you try to be friends with them. Like, hey, I've got some problems myself, and I'm not saying I'll make up a story just to do this strategically. I'm saying be honest, right? Because in reality, they see you as someone way up there, but in reality, it is never like that in real life. In real life, everyone's got, you know, problems in some issues in the background. They got some weaknesses, some vulnerabilities. So we just have to share a little bit so they can see us as a human being and not as an opponent, as a person to conquer and to put down. And also what Nina was saying is, if it still starts to affect one's life, which is a common case, like Yudhishthira, right? The Pandavas were constantly being attacked by Duryodhana and the Kauravas, and whatever they do to try to please, right, the Kauravas were never happy. So this is where the person needs to set boundaries, right? In other words, they need to confront upright and say, I know that you are feeling this way about me, and I'm sorry, but I cannot do anything about it. But I would say I'm not satisfied, I'm not happy with this behavior, and I'm telling you now what I will settle for and what I will not settle for. Because if this happens again, then we will have to escalate the situation into a much more, you know, serious matter. So that again, the person is standing up for oneself and specifying clearly what the boundaries are. In fact, Krishna shows us the ultimate way to set up boundaries when he offered, you know, the entire, he said to Duryodhana, give them back the Indraprastha. No. Give them back one district, right? Or something. No. Give them back 5 houses. No. Give them back 1 house with 5 rooms. No. Give them back 1 room with 5 rooms. No. Okay? War. In other words, no, no, no. I kept giving you chances, and now I see that nothing else works. So what do? I set boundaries. Fine. War. So we will talk a lot more about this act of setting boundaries and the importance of it. And next week, what we will talk about is whereby Duryodhana starts to put 2 plots. And the first plot is he sets the wax house on fire. And the second plot is whereby the Kauravas invite the Pandavas to the game of dice. Now that's a big story in itself. Now, lastly, I want to address one section that was said last week and we will close, and this is very important, is going back to that, why did Yudhishthira accept the barren land, and should he have accepted the barren land? And someone said if Yudhishthira said to the king, Dhritarashtra, no, then someone said then the war would have came earlier than later. I'm sure you remember that. And then they said, because everything comes at the right time, right? Everything comes at the right place. In other words, what was trying to be communicated is that, you know, maybe they should have not accepted, because then the situation would have turned out differently, but there is a time for them to accept. So they didn't accept, they accepted the land. So in other words, it came at the right time. Now, this statement of there is a time for everything, right? This is the right time. This implies fate. And this becomes a problem. You heard the statement, there is a time for everything. There is a time for Yudhishthira to make war sooner than later. In other words, it is all as though scripted, like life becomes scripted. So this basically implies that Ishvara has a plan for everyone that's already written. And there's a time where Ishvara is going to go, okay, 19th of December, 2019, I'm going to unleash the COVID so that everyone can go, you know, indoors. People can stop flying and they can start reflecting on their lives. Just means that okay, so they're going to be in this court. No, the time is not right. This is supposed to happen much later. In other words, if we start to think like this, that there is a time for everything, then it makes Ishvara a sadist. What is a sadist? One who enjoys the suffering of others when it's their time to suffer. In other words, makes Ishvara as, you know, an entity sitting with popcorn going, okay, this person is about to break up. I can hardly wait to see how this is going to play out. Okay, this person is, you know, now going to come back together. I can hardly wait to see how this is going to work out. So again, this attitude of there is a right time and it's meant to happen, This is how things are. It's supposed to happen. All of these ideas are going through the spiritual world and they are distorted. And we will clear them up next week. For example, going to that first example that I mentioned with Mr. P driving his Porsche 149 kilometers an hour. And so according to this philosophy, now we can say he was supposed to drive 149 kilometers an hour. The 4 cops, those 4, not some other 4, but those very 4 are supposed to be chasing him. They were supposed to sit, because it was scripted out, right? Supposed to stop him. And the truck driver was supposed to kill them all because it was their fate. It was their destiny. Now just think about if this is has any kind of merit to thinking like this. So next week, we will talk about these errors commonly made through statements like, it's meant to happen and it's supposed to happen. And we will understand how this word destiny, actually, we have to investigate it and see that there is an intermediate cause and an immediate cause. And we will see these causes, what contributes to that which we call destiny, in reflection to what happened in Draupadi with her disrobing in the court. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about in terms of understanding this term fate and destiny, because lots of notions go around it, and it makes the individual go into this mode of victimhood. My life is all scripted out and I have no way out. Okay, but that's not the case. So we will talk about this next week. Okay, let's conclude. Before we conclude, any questions? Final comments?
Andre, I have a question that Nina brought up kind of in my thinking as well. When does the jnani, the one who understands this total vision, does the self-growth ever stop for that person?
No.
Like I was thinking this week, like I know that the enamel on my teeth is mithya, but that doesn't mean I don't stop brushing my teeth. I understand my mind and intellect is mithya, but it shouldn't mean that I stop doing my meditation or I stop doing my Sudoku to, not for the health of the mind. Because in the modern Advaita, which I haven't been in for a couple of years, they would just completely dismiss the entity that grows.
Yeah, true. Okay, so the answer to that is the word physical exercise changes both the definition and purpose from a youngster to an adulthood. For a youngster, the term physical exercise means looking good. What's the purpose of physical exercise for a youngster? To be attractive and attract all the boys, and, well, in this case, the girls, right? When the person grows up, the word physical exercise changes both the definition and the purpose. For some who are a little bit older here, what does physical exercise mean for you now? It probably means just staying in shape. It no longer means looking good, being strong, attracting a crowd, showing the muscles, and in case your back and having hips and keeping the weight off and so on. That used to be strong back then, but now the definition has changed. So in the same way, self-growth for a ajnani has a different definition, and it evolves by the time the status is of a jnani. So the self-growth continues, but the purpose and the intention is different for both. Now, what's the purpose for a jnani, for a realized one? That is, the person still lives in this world, still communicates, still has chores, still has work. So you still, for example, you want to go to work and you need some skills, right? You need some skills to communicate so that you can improve and negotiate better. So obviously you can go then and learn some negotiation skills. So the summary to this is self-growth continues, but the intention is no longer, for a jnani, for a realized one, is no longer how can I make myself bigger? How can I become more? That category belongs to a ajnani, to a non-realized one.
So you could say the jnani, the vision expands to serving other people, or loka sangraha, instead of focused on their self.
Yeah, so so for the sake of serving others more efficiently in a much more creative manner, for that you still need skills.
Yeah.
For example, I said to Kelsey, I'm just buying a piano now, and one still wants to learn skills. You're innocent to it. You still want to develop. You still want to grow. You still want to play an instrument, you still want to exercise, because as long as there's a person, a relative self, it has a need to grow.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks
So we shouldn't dismiss this. Vedanta is not about dismissing. It is about including, but our vision is in the right place. We don't mix up, I'm improving the I, right? The I is free already. We're just improving that relative self for the sake of, as you say, servicing and sharing your creativity to the world. Why wouldn't you? Because the person's helpless. You want to express that love to the world in a form of music, form of painting, guitar, programming, drawing, whatever it is that you like. That's fine. No issues there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, smiley faces. I will see us next week.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye,
Andre.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.